Good morning, Rabotai, and welcome to your second class of the day. Breakfast in the class dedicated in loving memory of Adele Mala, Aleh Shalom Lili Nishmat Adina Bat Bahiyeh, sponsored by her son Albert Mala, and the week of cold brew sponsored by David E. Ash in honor of you and your substantial capacity to do good today and every day. My friends, I want to read you one beautiful line. V'chol asher titen li, and everything that you give me, aser a'aserenu lach. Everything that you give me, aser a'aserenu lach, I will tithe. I will surely tithe for you. Now we've talked about this a few times already. Sorry?
90-10. Make great deals. 90-10 is a great deal.
90-10 is a good deal. That's a good deal. And Hashem's shopping around. He said Hashem's shopping around, and he couldn't get better than that, though. That's the hazit here. Okay. So what's amazing to me is that there's a machloket, and we've described this machloket a couple of times already. There's a machloket, a disagreement amongst the poskim, where we learn the law of giving 10% to charity from. One idea is that we learn the law of maaser. Where do we learn it from? We learn it from the maaser that a person has to give from his field. Okay? And if you learn maaser from that place, from the fact that you have to give maaser on your tibuah, okay? That halakha, the Mefarshim, the Rishonim already say, means that the only maaser you're allowed to give is to poor people. So if maaser ksafim, if giving 10% of your cash, of your, not agriculture, not the 10th animal that comes through the pen, okay? Giving 10% is 10% of the money in the register, 10% of the money you got from your stocks, 10% of the money that you earned, on a great deal in a building. Maaser ksafim, where does that come from? It comes from maaser behema. Then it can only be given to poor people. Why? Because there, the pasuk tells you it has to go to ani, to a poor person. So let's say I want to build a synagogue. Everybody knows you're allowed to give maaser to the shul. You're allowed to give maaser to a yeshiva. You're allowed to give maaser to a mikveh, right? All these things are charitable donations that you're allowed to give your 10% to. But if you learn maaser from there, you're not allowed to give it to that. It's only if it's relevant to a poor person. That's not a donation to a poor person. And therefore, it would not count towards your maaser. However, if you learn maaser from here, aser a'aserenu lach, anything that I earn, v'chol asher titen li, anything you give me, aser a'aserenu lach, who does Yaakov say he's going to give it to? To who? Who's lach? To God, which means to anything which is spiritual, anything that belongs to Hashem, any mitzvah is relevant. Sorry? It's a good question, but lach and lecha interchangeable. No, not necessarily. Lach is not always female. Not true. Okay? Now, I want to point this out. This is so important. Okay? Ready for this? Really, really, so important. Why am I raising this halachic question? First of all, you should just know, I get asked this question all the time. Generally, Ashkenazim hold, like the Ramah, that you're allowed to give maaser to anything spiritual. He brings in the halakha, a person's allowed to give maaser to the candles that they used to light in the synagogue. You want to pay the electric bill of the shul, no problem, fadal. That's a maaser worthy, okay? That's what the Ramah writes. Okay? Sephardim were always a little bit more makpid on maaser because the poskim that we relied on learned it from maaser tivuah, which is only for a poor person, only for ani. So the Hatam Sofer rules la halakha that even if that's the case, a person can say, repeat after me. Repeat after me. You do, what's it called? I don't have the two judges with me. You do what's called hatarat nedarim. You do hatarat nedarim. And then after you matir the neder, that you're going to give that money in this way, you're allowed to give it to anything. Okay? That was a fantastic psak halacha, a ruling in halacha, that allows a person, even if that was the what their minhag was, to shift now and give them maaser to anyone. My rabbi always pointed out that when you give money to a yeshiva, you're also giving money to the poor. Why? Because there are students in the yeshiva that don't pay full tuition. They get from the yeshiva, what do they get? They get a discount. They get a scholarship. That scholarship has to be paid by someone. So my maaser to a yeshiva is not only aser asrenu lach to you, God, it's also to poor people. A synagogue, who's supposed to support the synagogue? Everyone who comes to it. Now some people, they go up to the Torah, they give ba'in yafa, they give in a nice way. Some people are pillars of the shul, they put their name on the wall of the synagogue. Hazaku Baruch, wonderful thing that they're doing, they're supporting the community. But there's many people who come to the synagogue and they can't afford. And they want to pray, and they want to eat in the synagogue breakfast. What did the shul do? The shul fed people. Kiddush on Shabbat morning. I have this conversation all the time with some people in the shul. They say, this guy came to shul after the Salah was over. He came only for the Kiddush. What is that? We shouldn't let them in. And I think to myself, what are you talking about? Okay, the guy didn't come to pray. But he came and he ate kosher food on Shabbat. He had, number one, a Seudat Shabbat. Number two, you fed someone who was hungry. If that's such a bad thing, let's go have a conversation with Avraham Avinu and tell him we're not interested in Haknasat Orchim, we're not interested in feeding the hungry, right? It's crazy. Right? This is one of the core values of the Jewish people. Now, I'm not saying we have to turn the synagogue into a soup kitchen, right? I'm not saying that. But at the same time, if you have mixed in a few people here and there, it's not the end of the world. And when a person is giving money then to the synagogue, not only are they giving to a spiritual value, they're also giving to sustain and to support people that don't have the money, people that are poor. So in general, most expenses that a person would give to with regards to the halacha of maaser, along with it being a spiritual expense, it is also a expense which relates to aniyim. Now I want to continue on with this idea. What is this kol asher titen li aser asrenu lach? Now it's funny because there's another time when we read about this 10%, not just over here. Where did I just mention we have it? Right? Aser ta'aser. Sammy, how does it go? Not this one. Aser ta'aser, we read on the holidays. I said Maaser Tevuah, right? I said, funny that each time it mentions the concept of Maaser, it says it in a double lashon. Over here, Aser Asrenu Lach. Over there, Aser Ta'aser. Why each time it mentions Maaser does it feel the need to mention it in the double language? So literally, the Gemara in numerous places describes this concept. You find in the Torah numerous times where things are said in a double language. Hakem takim, ha'anek ta'anek, right? Many times you find hashev teshivem. You find these, concepts that are reiterated 2 times. And sometimes that idea is that it's a strengthening of a mandate. I really shouldn't say that word, sorry. It's a strengthening of a requirement, of an obligation. Okay? What's the strengthening? Hashev teshivem, you shall surely return. Or ha'anek ta'anek, you should surely help this person. Patoach tiftach et yadecha. You open, you shall surely open. So it's just more, right? It's more. However, the Gemara has a special derasha that it makes on aser ta'aser, which it does not make in other places. So as an example, the Gemara says, aser ta'aser, aser bishvil shetit asher. Give 10% in order that you should receive, you should become wealthy. The Gemara doesn't say, patoach tiftach. Open your hand in order that you should become an amazing slapball champion. It doesn't say that anywhere. It doesn't say, hashev teshivim. Return, you shall return in order that you should return in teshuvah. The Gemara doesn't make that derasha with all these other times that you have this double language. It doesn't say that what you're going to do, you're going to get for something else. And we've mentioned this many times. And part of the reason is because this is the only mitzvah that we can make that derasha. Because as the Gemara quotes, in the name of the Navi, Bichanuni na bazot, Hashem says, test me please, bazot, in this. But God is saying, test me only in this. Person who tests God and says, I'm going to study Torah, I'm and I want to see if you're going to improve my life. Asur. It's a lack of faith. It's a chutzpah also. God doesn't owe you anything. The Torah that you're going to learn might make up for a drop in the bucket of everything He's given you from the beginning of your life until now. Right? You don't, you owe the bank, $1 million. You don't come give them $1 and say, I'd like to take out another loan. You're like, okay, you have $999,000 left to pay back, and then we'll talk about another loan. The guy's like, I learned 3 minutes of Torah. Where's my new parnasah? What are your new parnasah? You're still on the payment plan. You're on the interest-only 30-year fixed. What are you talking about? You haven't even begun to pay down principal, Rahi. Okay? B'chanuni nabazot, God says, test me in this. Tzedakah is the only thing in the world a person's allowed to say to Hashem, I'm throwing down the gauntlet, I'm challenging you.
Show me the money.
Here, show me the money. I'm going to show you the money. You show me the money. I'm going to give 10%. I'm going to even push myself. I'm going to give 20%. And when they give Maaser, a person's allowed to challenge God. I have a person here in the synagogue who, when we learned the laws of Maaser, he learned this idea. He said, I can't believe it. I'm allowed to do that. I never knew I was allowed to do that. And he started Maasering Hashem. And the guy came to me, he says, this has revolutionized my life. I said, what do you mean? He says, ever since I started being strict on the laws of Maaser. What does it mean, strict on the laws of Maaser? The Mishnah says in Pirkei Avot, right? And it's actually a source of a lot of discussion. The says a person should not be rely on amadot. Anyone remember the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot? The source of the machloket is that the language of the Mishnah in Avot is that it says a person should not exceedingly rely on amadot. Okay? And as a machloket, what does it mean? What does that mean, amadot? Amadot means guesstimations. I think I made like around $100,000 on this deal, roughly, give or take. Right? We like using these words. So how much do I owe tzedakah? Roughly, give or take, 10,000. Don't guesstimate. And the Mefarshim bring two opinions. One opinion is that you're allowed to do it here and there. Second opinion is, why are we saying this? Because we're worried you might underestimate. If you underestimated your 100,000, what did you give? You gave 9,500. How much do you really owe? 10,000. You're short 500. First opinion in the Mefarshim is that you're short.
You're hurting yourself.
What? You're hurting yourself because you didn't give and you didn't get. Second opinion is, even if you guesstimate higher, it's a disrespect to the mitzvah to not do it exactly. Does anyone here overestimate and just say, look, I'm just going to go high. Probably, I'll just give them 100,000 in taxes. We don't give them 1 cent more. Then, bizarre, you're going to give them what you owe them, okay? You don't give them 1 cent more. These guys taking everything I own, right? That's how people feel. When it comes to tzedakah, if you're guesstimating, it's like you're not taking it seriously. Imagine, as an example, you were mixing a medicine, okay? And it needs 1.2 milliliters of this and 0.7, and you have a guy who's making the medication for you. You're in the hospital. Yeah, it's something, whatever. More. I got it right, more or less. Right? It's not. You're not taking it seriously. So the idea here is that if you're relying on amadot, it's not important. Hakadosh Baruch Hu says on this, B'chanuni nabazot, test me. The guy says, I started being makpid on Maaser. What does that mean? That means he has a separate account. That means that when he takes money in, what does he do with the money? Immediately, as soon as he gets his pay, as soon as he gets his deal, separates 10%, puts it in the account. That way, I think I gave, I'm not sure, did I give? I think I went up to the shul, I gave that. Did that cover this? This cover? You're sitting there, right? You're taking something as important tzedakah, and what are you turning it into? Right? this expense, that money came in, that came out. I'm not, no one has any idea. I'll just give a little bit more, it'll be fine. Right? What is that? That's a circus act. Right? What is that? Yeah? Al tabe, you can't give in that way. Now listen to this. He said, since I started being strict on Maaser, he says, my whole life has changed. Every area in his life has gotten better, he said. Now, I didn't say that, he said that. He says, how come no one speaks about this? I said, no one speaks about Maaser. no one speaks about tzedakah. I said, you're not coming to enough classes. But you know what he said? And he's right. He says, no one speaks about the exactitude of Maaser. The importance of how to do it, and how to do it right, and how to check someone if it's real. The halakha is, l'tashiv dach nichlam, you don't turn away a person. If he comes, you give him something. But how much you have to give in order to fulfill l'tashiv dach nichlam? You give 50 cents, you did it. $1. You didn't turn him away empty-handed. You want to give somebody some serious money, find out for sure if it's legit. He has a mikveh, really? Where? Go on Google. I want to see the mikveh. Where is it? Let me see. Okay? The guy says he has a what's it called? The yeshiva kula. Check it out. Ask the rabbi to find out. And that way you can give, and you can give more, because it was checked out. Every person that comes to collect tzedakah, what do they have today? They have this piece of paper. You know what that piece of paper means? It means they went to a bet din. It means they went to someone. The person looked over what they have. They say they need this kind of money. They say they have this many people. And someone is saying, this guy's not a sketch. That's why I always ask for the paper. You know what the first thing I do when I look at the paper, if I'm checking for tzedakah? Check the date. Hadai says his wife gave birth to a kid, right? The kid's in the hospital and needs treatments. You look up at the date, it says 2007. He's marrying off the kid now, you know what I mean? You understand what I'm saying? Now, but I'm saying not because you're trying to get out of giving, but because you're taking it seriously. I want to point this out. If you gave your money to tzedakah to a person that doesn't need tzedakah, you owe that money to tzedakah still. That money is by you. You're a shomer. It doesn't belong to you, that 10%. It belongs to the aniyin. It belongs to a poor person. If you, as a shomer, didn't do the right, the right checking, and you gave it to someone or to something that wasn't worthy, you still owe that money, tzedakah. Imagine you give me $100,000. You tell me, Rabbi, watch it for me. And then sometimes you tell me, give $10,000, this guy, then I tell other $50,000, I gave it to this guy because, I think you might want to give it to him. He's the type of guy that you might want to give it to. And then you come to me afterwards and you say, where's the other $50,000? It's like, oh, there's this guy, he came by, had a really nice face, it seemed nice, like the Knicks, I gave it to him. The guy says, I never told you, right? You're a shomer, you're a watchman. That money is by you, it's there for a purpose. You have to give it to the right person. So the job of Aser Asren Ulach, it's not something that's between you and the poor person. It's between you and God. And that's why it says Aser Asren Ulach. Yaakov Avinu was not only giving it to God and Korbanot. He wasn't giving it only to Bedek Abayit to fix up the Bet HaMikdash, which didn't exist yet. Okay? He wasn't giving it to the Yeshivat Shem Va'ever only. He was giving it to all sorts of, just causes. But his responsibility in giving out that 10%, who is it to? Who's our responsibility to in tzedakah? Lach, to you. And therefore the pasuk says, specifically by this double language, Aser Asrenu Lach, Aser Bishvil Shetit. A person gives that tzedakah, they can know that will come back in their deals. They can know that will come back. And sometimes, by the way, it comes back in funny ways. A person sitting there looking at the deal sheet, and they're like, I gave this tzedakah, I didn't make anything. And then I say to the guy, but how much rent did you pay? on your offices? Did something? Oh yeah, something happened with something happened where they lowered the rent. It's the same 10 grand. It's the same money that you find in your bank account for not paying expenses, or for having something go your way, or for having the IRS approve, a tax, a tax document that actually saves you that money, right? It's the same way. God has many ways to get you the money back. And a person just needs to keep their eyes open. And then they will see the hatzlacha that comes from the tzedakah that they give. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen. Rabbi